So I've already covered kind of a little bit of the new magic items and magic item crafting system for 1D&D or the 2024 5th edition, whatever you want to call it. Um, but I could have gone more in depth, and I figured the best way to get an outside perspective is to, well, go outside and listen to your, well, I'll call them peers, even though they have no idea who I am. So we're going to go over the DM Layers video. He's a great guy. He's a great content creator. I heavily recommend watching his videos if you don't already. He is a wealth of knowledge. Probably not one of the biggest content creators in the D&D scape, but just leaps and bounds larger than I am. At the time of recording, I think he's got like 175,000 subscribers, so he knows what he's talking about. So let's go ahead and see what he has to say about magic items.
They tell us, you may not even play again, so give your players cool magic items. Reward them well. Don't hold back. They never told you, though, what to do if you do play again. They never told you what to do once you had low-level characters running around with rare, very rare, and legendary magic items. They never mentioned the effect that would have on the encounters in that module you bought. But that was your first D&D campaign. Sure, it only lasted a few months due to scheduling issues, perhaps the number one cause of mortality for all games.
Yeah.
But you've learned a thing or two since then. For instance, you've heard that D&D 5th edition is balanced, so that characters don't even need magic items to succeed in the game. In fact, you think you may have read it in Xanathar's Guide to Everything even. Why it wasn't in the Dungeon Master Guide is beyond you, but whatever. So your next campaign, no magic items.
Oof.
Or at least very few of them. However, they never told you that players expect magic items, that finding them is one of the most rewarding parts of the game, and
Yeah.
if you don't give them out, you're likely to have very dissatisfied players. But that was just your second D&D campaign. Since then, you've actually read a bit more of the Dungeon Master Guide, and you've discovered that the very beginning of Chapter 7, Treasure, even tells how many magic items to give out. How you missed that the first time, well, who knows. So, now you're rolling on tables, generating random amounts of magic items and treasure and giving out random magic items because, well, that's what the tables tell you to do. Just give out random amounts of magic items and treasure. What they never mentioned was what to do when your party of all melee characters gets magic items for spellcasters and then wants to go sell them. But that was just your third D&D campaign. You're a veteran now, 3 groups and 2 months later. Yeah, campaigns do tend to fall apart quite often,
Yeah,
but that's just life,
unfortunately.
right? You think you finally discovered the answers to your magic item plight until one of your players asks if your world is a low, medium, or high magic world, then that's about where you lost it entirely. Hi, I'm Luke Hart, and on this channel,
So that I love that intro. It's very much displaying the fact that no matter what, you're always going to be learning. And magic items have a large learning curve for dungeon masters. And you know, no matter how many games you've campaigned, no matter how many campaigns you've run, you're always going to be learning what to do better than the last campaign. And unfortunately, he said it. Schedules cause many campaigns to fall short. So for that, I say just try and stay flexible as possible, I guess. Take notes on your own campaign so that if, should you have to go a month or two without playing, you still know where you are. But yeah, every campaign's going to have a different amount of magic items, and that's okay because you're always learning. You're always learning, and you're always going to have a different set of players that expect something different, and that's okay.
I share my nearly 30 years of Game Master experience so that you can run amazing games that your players will love. And today we're talking about magic items. If you hopefully could tell by my long rambling introduction that I probably should have changed, but I'm too lazy, I suppose. Specifically, we're going to go over some high-level advice for magic item distribution. Define the magic level of your world, determine exactly how many magic items you should reward to your players, and discuss how you should distribute them. By the way, if you're a new or veteran dungeon master looking for an anthology of D&D 5th edition adventures, monsters, magic items, puzzles, traps, and more, I think you're going gonna love Layers and Legends and Loot and Lore. My team and I specifically designed these adventures to be easy to use and fast to prep. Once you have these books, you may never need to buy another, which is kind of a problem for me because I kind of have a business to run, but yeah, I guess that ship sailed now. Anyway, you can
Those books are absolutely fantastic. I don't own them myself because, I'm a broke boy, but a buddy of mine does, and I've gone through them and I've used them in my campaigns, and they are fantastic. I do recommend buying them. I'm going to be buying my own copy so I can stop sharing as soon as I can. But they are fantastic. Him and his team are great at all of that stuff, especially the puzzles. I have trouble writing puzzles, and so fantastic. Love everything about them.
grab hardcovers and PDFs over on thedmlayer.com or at the links below. High-level advice. First, let's start off with the most obvious. D&D 5th edition claims to be balanced so that characters don't need magic items to succeed
It's not.
the game. And that statement is half right. Characters don't need magic items to succeed. Player characters are plenty powerful on their own. And with every supplement that WotC releases, they only get more powerful, what with power creep intentionally added to bolster book sales and whatnot. However, if you've played the game for more than a hot second, you know that it isn't balanced. The challenge rating system doesn't really work too well, and the rarity system they use for magic items is often flat out wrong, meaning that what they list as an uncommon item can be way more powerful than a rare item. But I don't want to dwell on that. We've all heard enough rants about that topic. More than likely. My real point is that since the game isn't really balanced to begin with, D&D 5th edition, I wouldn't worry too much about achieving perfect magic item balance with your game. You're just gonna have to let that wonderful idea die a slow death. And honestly, that can be kind of liberating because you won't be beating your head against a wall quite as much. I used to be fairly uptight about following the recommended amounts of magic items and treasure in general, such as gold pieces, but when I run D&D 5th edition, I worry about it much less. Sure, when I run a system like Pathfinder 2, a much more tightly balanced game, I need to follow those rules more closely, but when you're dealing with D&D 5th edition, whatever. My second pro tip. It's better to give fewer and less powerful magic items to your players than the reverse. Remember, if you do see that characters are falling behind the power curve, as unlikely as that is in D&D 5th edition, or that the players themselves are grumbling that they don't get enough magic items, you can always give out more. However, once you give them magic items, it's hard to get that genie back in the bag or bottle if you later discover that you went overboard. Next.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. Some weak magic items are fantastic. Some that only has like a charge or two, and then they've got to, go through some steps or just do a long rest to get those charges back to be able to use it again. Small things like that. It'll make them feel like they're getting more than they really are. Even some of the more veteran players, you give them like a wand of magic missile. It's got 2 charges of magic missile. That sounds game breaking, but it's really not. Especially if it's 2 charges of level 1 magic missile doesn't do a whole lot of damage, but they can use it twice technically for free every day. They feel like they're getting more than they are, and if later on in the campaign you want to give them something a little bit more, you can. You won't feel in the beginning of the campaign that they have too much and they're too strong. So that is a fantastic tip. I love it.
Give your players a mix of magic items hand-picked for their characters, things you know that they could put to good use, and random magic items. The idea is to balance between fun and verisimilitude. Shoot, I've sometimes just asked players to give me magic item wish lists, and then I handpick items from their own lists for them. This has reduced my own work. I don't have to go scouring magic item lists to see what I might want to give them, and it guarantees that players get stuff that they'll want to use. Finally,
okay, so the wish list is a great idea. However, a little caveat to that is I would recommend that if you're going to get a wish list of magic items from your players, you get it at the beginning of session 0. Like while they're making the characters. That way, by the time you're ready to start giving them magic items, they'll have forgotten about their wish list. You keep it, they forget about it. That way they're not expecting after every encounter later on in the game to get a certain magic item, because a lot of times they want some super powerful stuff that you don't really want to give them, or you don't want to give it to them till nearing the end of the campaign. randomized magic loot is fantastic. However, there's no way around this. You're going to end up with some upset players because you're going to end up giving them some magic loot that no one in the party can really use, or you're going to give it to that one really greedy player by accident that, you're going to give them something that'd be great for the cleric, and the rogue's like, nope, it's mine. I'm not giving it to him, and it is what it is. But that's definitely something that should be thought about is giving out random magic items, because they can't complain about not getting magic items. They can complain about not getting useful magic items, but I mean, everything's useful to some extent. But yeah, if you're going to do the wish list, I heavily recommend you do it at the beginning of session 0. That way they forget about it by the time you're ready to start giving them the big, powerful magic items that is going to make up the majority of their wish list. Because, and it's going to sound really messed up, but players are greedy when it comes to magic items. It is what it is. I said what I said, and I do not take it back.
Tread carefully with magic item shops, where players can just buy and sell magic items freely. The principal problem is that when players are allowed to do this, they can really customize and min-max their builds. It gives you things like a paladin sorcerer with both heavy armor, the shield spell, and the cloak of displacement. They're essentially unhittable. This is why I prefer wish lists, because I can still review and approve a magic item before allowing it into the game. Now, if you do have magic item shops, I strongly recommend putting a limit on what can be obtained there. For instance, you may say that common and uncommon magic items can be purchased, but everything else is too highly valued to be for sale on the open market. And the second problem that you may run into, depending upon your group, is that the characters might decide that they want to start robbing magic item shops. I've had players discussing this before. No, sure, you can.
Yeah, so it's for exactly that reason that I'll occasionally have some like +1 magic items in some shops, and they're going to be incredibly expensive. But any of the advanced magic items, I usually keep them to like a black market, so to speak, a hidden shop somewhere in the city that they don't know about. If they're specifically looking for it and they're roll high enough, they might hear some villagers talk about it, some citizens talk about this black market that's going on deep in the dark bowels of the city, and it's full of all of these sleek criminal looking people, making them feel like, maybe it's not really safe to try and rob any of the shops down here. And even then, it's a black market, so you could look at the cost of the magic item in the book, and it's going to be more expensive than that because it's being sold illegally. Anything sold illegally is always going to be more expensive. And that's not to say that the magic item themselves are illegal in the city, but the sale of advanced magic items is illegal. That's how I do it, to give them a chance to get the item they want without having to rely on, luck. But it usually costs the majority of their gold, and sometimes some of the gold of other players, just for one item. So it's kind of buyers beware. And with black market, you can kind of sometimes, if your players have really pissed you off, sell them fake magic items. If they fail a roll, it's like, oh yeah, that's it. You can tell from your 6 in your Arcana check that it's magical, but you can't quite tell what it is. Or the shopkeep said it was a ring of invisibility, and you did an insight check to see if you can see any signs of them lying, but you rolled a 3. Well, you can't really tell, so you think they might be telling the truth, and then it ends up being nothing, I don't know. That's what I like to do, but teach their own.
You can definitely have there be consequences and defenses around these magic shops and all that sort of thing. But if that's not the game you want to run as the game master, and you suspect your players might want to go there, I would recommend 2 things. First, you could have a blunt conversation with your players and simply tell them that they aren't allowed to rob magic item shops. That you're just not going to deal with that stuff. I mean, you could be like, well, there's all these protections around it and all these different defenses and wards and stuff, and in this world, thievery used to be.
So that's kind of a slippery slope. The problem is, once you start telling your players you can't do something, that they're not allowed to do something in particular, they start getting irritated. That makes them want to do it even more, and then they get more irritated that they can't do it. Especially something as simple as like robbing a store. Now, some things should absolutely be vetoed immediately. You can't do, SA stuff like that. But the second you start telling your players you can't rob magic shops, well, now they're going to start getting irritated. They're going to start feeling like they're being put in a box. They're going to start seeing you as a power player DM, and you don't want that, because then they're going to stop having fun. I get what he's saying here, and yeah, sometimes you have to tell them that, but I would try and find a different way of doing it. Make them feel like trying to rob the store is going to result in their death. Like, if somebody goes, okay, well, I want to try and do a sleight of hand, what I would do is, if you have an actual like shop, not just like an outdoor stall, with the second they walk in, ask what everyone's passive insight is, or passive perception is. And depending on what their passive perception is, go, okay, you feel like you're being watched the second you walk through the door. If you keep that perception check low, they'll all feel it. They'll all feel like they're being watched constantly. Somebody will attempt a stealth check, and when you, no matter how high they roll, you'd be like, you still feel like you're being watched, but you can't figure out by what. And if they decide to like inspect the entirety of the inside of the building, you can have like little magic eyes like kind of rolling around following them. It's just stuff like that, little things to make them feel less safe trying to rob the magic shop, instead of just outright telling them, no, you're not allowed. But sometimes you got to tell them they're not allowed.
Common of magic item shops, and now there's this like big massive defensive system that they all have, and you could do all this stuff if you wanted to, which would be totally logical, because if there were magic item shops, they would be very heavily defended.
Absolutely.
To ward off criminals and thieves. It's completely logical, but that might not be the game you want to play. And second, you could just not have there be any magic item shops.
Yeah.
The magic item shop is the equivalent of the bank in modern times. Bank robberies do happen, but fairly seldomly, because the defenses around it and the preventive measures are so great. It's just, not very many people get away with it. You get caught, you go to jail and stuff, so people tend not to try it a whole lot because it doesn't usually pay off. The same should be true of magic item shops. They should be so heavily defended, and repercussions of robbing them should be so great that like nobody really wants to try it, because you're just a lose-lose scenario. By the way, if you're finding this information useful, please give me a thumbs up and share this video with a fellow game master. And if you're not already subscribed to my channel, why not subscribe while you're at it? That's a real question. If you have a reason not to subscribe, you let me know in the comments. I'm not threatening you. This was just let's move along now. Defining your world's magic level. This is an incredibly important consideration for your game. Are you running a low magic, medium magic, or high magic game and or world? Now, many people believe that D&D 5th edition is a medium magic system, but that's not true at all. 5th edition is by definition high magic. Magic is readily available and accepted. Wizards are respected and not hunted down or outlawed. Magic items are readily available for player characters, even if they're lying in dungeons and you gotta go find them. And things like healing potions are affordable and not mysterious. You just go to a local shopkeeper and you can buy the things. Now, D&D 5th edition may not be as high magic as 3.5 was, nor as high magic as other systems such as RuneQuest, but it is definitely a high magic system. Medium magic aligns more with properties like Patrick Rothfuss's Kingkiller Chronicle, or, and I'm gonna mess this pronunciation up big time, Andrzej Sapkowski's The Witcher, which I can say The Witcher, that's pretty easy to say. Now, in a medium magic world, magic is likely to only exist in the hands of the characters and their villains, and it's still relatively rare. Characters might get one big signature magic item and have access to potions, but they shouldn't expect to find a magic shop or be able to buy healing potions at every temple. While they are still arguably high magic, the original D&D and AD&D systems were intended to be medium magic worlds, though that quickly changed as more game rules emerged and the Forgotten Realms was born. Low magic worlds are represented by works like Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings, George R.R. Martin's Song of Ice and Fire, and the original Dragonlance trilogy. In a low magic world, magic items are extremely rare, and a first level wizard is already considered powerful. Common people may have never even seen magic, they may not believe in it, and wizards and sorcerers are unlikely to be trusted by the masses. Now that you know the magic level of your game, you're ready for the next step, determining how many magic items to reward. Now, the unfortunate truth here is that the Dungeon Master Guide guide doesn't exactly tell us how many magic items we should reward to our players. Random tables that generate random amounts of magic items can only get you so far. Of course, if you're playing it rather loose, they might work just fine. I used a combination of those random tables in the Dungeon Master's Guide and hand-selected magic items for nearly a decade, and I did okay-ish. However, at some point, you might be curious as to exactly how many magic items you should give and what level rarity they should be. And if that's what you're looking for, then Xanathar's Guide to Everything is the book you'll want. Or at least, you'll want page 135, which we'll conveniently do a screenshot of here on screen, because that's where you can find 2 tables that tell you exactly how many magic items at which rarity levels to give your players at which tiers of play, and that should have really been included with the original Dungeon Master Guide. Now, it does differentiate between minor and major magic items, and then refers you to tables in the Dungeon Master's Guide that list them out. And that is an added layer of complexity that is rather frustrating, to be honest. However, if you're willing to weed through that minor and major nightmare, and cross-reference tables, this system could be what you're looking for if you want to get really precise about how many and how powerful of magic items to give your players over the course of the entire campaign. Like, if planning things out at that level of detail is your thing, then giddy up, because you're in for a ride. Okay, great. Using Xanathar's, we can now get really precise, but how do we adjust that based on the level of magic in your game? I would consider Xanathar's base numbers to represent a high magic world, since D&D 5th edition is high magic. So if that's what you're running, you're done. Just use those tables. Now, for a medium magic world, I would probably have the number of major items that the party receives from the tables in Xanathar's. Furthermore, most magic items should be utility items rather than weapons, and the magical weapons that do exist should be rather basic. A standard +1 longsword in a medium magic world is a great find that even mid to high level characters would be proud to wield. Also, magic items gained early in the game might only function at certain times of day or under certain circumstances, such as when underground, to make them more wondrous and emulate the feel of medium magic. Magic shops certainly shouldn't exist here, although characters might be able to buy and sell magic items through downtime, rules for which do exist in Xanathar's, by the way. However, prices should be at least doubled for magic items that are available to purchase, again representing the rarity of magic in a medium magic world. Now, for a low magic world, I would consider removing major magic items altogether, except for maybe one major item for each character. And then you have the number of minor magic items you give out. Most magic items should be utility items, and magic weapons should be super rare. I wouldn't have the major items appear until completing the first tier, or maybe even second tier of the campaign, perhaps around level 5 or maybe around level 10 or so. Though you could possibly delay that even further if you know your campaign will be a long-running one. But I wouldn't go past level 10. They should get something really cool before then, for sure, in my opinion. Remember, in The Lord of Rings, Frodo's signature powerful item was a +1 dagger, Sting, which glowed when orcs were nearby. If you look at the One Ring, which is considered an artifact, all it did was turn you invisible and grant you long life, and even that came with a terrible curse. Okay, so now we know how many magic items to give our players, which leads us to the next step, determining how to dole magic items out. First, don't dump all the treasure in one big treasure chest at the end of the adventure. Having the NPC quest giver hand out all of the treasure is the same thing, so don't do that either. Instead, distribute the magic items and treasure over the entire adventure or dungeon. Each encounter and each room should have a portion of the treasure to be found. Now, yes, the villain of the adventure might have more than the mooks, but you get the idea. Second, if the bad guys have magic items and know they are magical, they should be using them. This makes sense, obviously, but also makes the adventure more challenging, something that almost every D&D 5th edition adventure needs.
Now, a little caveat to this as well. If you're gonna give your villain a magic item and you're gonna have them use it, that's all fine and dandy. I do it. I recommend it. It's great. But your player is going to attempt to pick up that magic item after combat. So you have to remember, if it's got charges, you have to remember how many charges you use. They can't pick it up and boom, it's at full charges. The villain was using the charges, right? That's just like if they were to pick up a magic item, use half the charges, hand it off to another player, and now that player's got all the charges left. That's not how it works, right? So you got to remember that. You got to remember any stipulations, any curse that villain had is now getting transferred over to the players, assuming it requires attunement. If it requires attunement, well, now they still can't use it because it needs to be attuned. You have to keep in mind all of these things. The biggest thing you have to remember is how many charges of that magic item you used. Because at the same time, if your villain uses it and uses 5 charges of whatever magic it's got, it will say magic missile, they use 5 charges, and then your player picks it up, and it's at 0 out of 3 charges. Well, then how did they use 5 charges? It has a maximum of 3, right? Continuity is a big thing, and I promise it may not always seem like it. Your players are looking for continuity errors so that they can try and change things on you. Like, no, you said this, so this is what it is. Be concise. Pay attention to what you're doing just as much as what they're doing, because they will capitalize on your mess up every time.
Anyway. Finally, it demonstrates the magic item to the players, showing it in action and makes them want it more. If there is a magic item that the monsters are not using, it should make sense why. For instance, a dragon can't really use a +1 longsword, but it will certainly keep it in its treasure hoard. One caveat on monsters using magic items. If we're talking expendable magic items,
oh, look at that, he's going over it anyway.
To have your monsters drink the last potion. You can certainly have them drink potions in combat because players will think that they're losing loot and hate the monster for that. But always still have at least 1 or more potions still intact on the monster's corpse that the players can loot. This turns the sting of loss into the glee of finding that there were indeed more. However, that's just what I think.
Yeah.
How do you distribute magic items in your games?
Yeah, so everything he said was absolutely fantastic. With consumable magic items, absolutely have them use them. Even if your little loot table says they should only have 1 of them, have them use them. Don't take it away from what they're supposed to have, but have them use it. That way the player sees it, they see it going down the drain, and then they're pleasantly surprised when they still get one after combat. Because if your enemy's using potions, using consumable magic items, it's going to make the combat longer. It's going to make it a little bit harder, and they deserve to have, a little something for for their troubles. So, but yeah, no, the DM Lair is a fantastic channel to learn how to DM, how to play in general. I love this channel, and I'm not just saying that because he and I have the same first name. It's fantastic. I recommend subscribing to him if you haven't already. I'm sure I'll cover more of his videos in the future, but for now, magic items are such a black hole of misinformation that I felt like I wanted to go over this for all the new players, all the new DMs to get a little better grasp. So, thanks for watching.